Please remain standing for prayers by the Reverend Tunde Balogun. Thank you.
Eternal God, creator of heavens and the earth, we acknowledge your sovereign hand over the nations, communities, and seasons of our lives. We thank you for the privilege of gathering this evening to serve the people of our beloved Hillingdon Borough. We give thanks to you, Lord, for the Diamond Jubilee year that we have shared the history, the unity, and the memorable milestone that have strengthened our community. May the foundation of love, faithfulness, and shared purpose that we sustained all together continue to inspire hope, cooperation in the years ahead. As this council convenes tonight, we commit its proceedings into your hands. Grant wisdom, clarity, and thoughts in integrity and compassion to our leaders and councillors. May their discussion be constructive, Lord. May their decisions be just. May their actions direct towards the well-being, peace, and the prosperity of all the residents of this borough. Lord, let this meeting be peaceful by your grace and by your mercy. Lord, bless all those who serve in public office. Bless them with strength, good health, patience, and discernment. Lord, uphold them in all their responsibilities and grant them peace in their homes and their families. We entrust this meeting to you, Lord. We seek your guidance, and we said all this is done in the mighty name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Please be Right, so we'll begin with apologies for absence, please. Lloyd?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, councillors, colleagues, members of the public. I have a number of apologies. The Deputy Mayor, Councillor Rita Chamdale, Councillors Bennett, Roy Chamdale, Garg, Goddard, Judge, Lewis, Money, Nelson and Palmer.
Thank you very much. And minutes, item 2, minutes of the meeting held on the 22nd of January 2026. Are they agreed? Thank you. Agenda item 3, declaration of interest, to note any declaration of interest in any matters before the council this evening. No? Okay, thank you. And then with that, straight on to the Mayor's announcements. So, today it has been my pleasure to host some of the students of journalism from Brunel University, and they produce the free issue Hillingdon Herald, which you may see in some of our libraries and other places. Now, these students are with us this evening, just sat to my right there, no doubt taking a keen interest in proceedings, and a very warm welcome to them, so thank you. Now, earlier this month, we hosted the Community Awards for 2026 at the Battle of Britain Bunker, where we recognised and celebrated the work of some of our wonderful volunteers. It serves as a reminder of the many great, selfless people who work on a voluntary basis, without courting publicity, to enhance the lives of so many people in Hillingdon and make the borough a better place to live. We are all very much in their debt, and my thanks to them. In terms of fundraising for the charitable trust, we had a highly successful Valentine's Day quiz at Arons Bar in Ruislip, and it was lovely to see Councillors Riley and Spord there on that occasion. But if you missed it, don't worry, there are other opportunities to support these activities. The first is the cheese and wine tasting on the 11th of March. There are still some opportunities there. That's at the Civic Centre. And then the final quiz of my mayoral year, which will be the St George's Day themed quiz on the 23rd of April, back at Morello Lounge in Uxbridge. One or two more things to come we're still working on. So you've already had notification of these events, but if you want any clarification at all, then do please email the Mayor's office. Finally, we are already at the end of February, and my days as Mayor are already numbered. How about that? I'm conscious that this meeting is the last occasion on which I get to address the Chamber which elected me last May. And so therefore, with politics pushed firmly to one side for a moment, whatever the local elections have in store for us collectively and individually, my thanks to everyone for the opportunity, and I wish you all the very best for the future. And with that, thank you very much. Let's have a good meeting. Thank you. We come now to agenda item 5, which is the report of Head of Democratic Services, and I'm calling on Lloyd first. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just before you call on the Leader of the Council, I just want to draw members' attention to the additional urgent item, little 1, changes to committee memberships, necessitated by the resignation of a councillor today.
Thank you very much. And so I now call Councillor Edwards.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I hope you don't mind if I go slightly off track or off agenda here to say that tonight the Public Sector Fraud Awards are being held as we speak. And it is only a few minutes ago that I heard that we had won the Local Excellence Award. So congratulations to the team. Yeah. And the award ceremony is still going on, and we are still nominated for another prize. So if I hear some whooping from officers, you know that we have been successful again. I would also like to take this opportunity to recognise that there are members of this chamber who by choice will not be returning, and who by the vagaries of standing for election may not return. I wish to thank them as leader of the council for their service to the residents and also the service to the council itself. We wouldn't survive without the endeavours of people prepared to step forward to be councillors, and I do salute and thank all of those members who will be retiring. I appreciate that. Turning to the actual report of the Head of Democratic Services, at item 1, it is the change to the committee membership. As mentioned, there are 2 changes or 2 appointments which are at the foot of page 1 of the order paper. And the second item is regarding the members' allowance. And again, we cannot, in good conscience, at this moment in time, award ourselves a pay rise, knowing that our residents are under some pressures. And so we are, again, freezing the members' allowance for this year. I move those 2 recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bianco, please.
And I second those.
Thank you. Any further debate? Apparently not. Is that agreed then? Thank you very much. So we move on to agenda item 6, which is the confirmation of Article 4 direction, and I'm going to call Councillor Tuckwell, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report asks Council to confirm the borough-wide immediate Article 4 direction, removing permitted development rights for conversion of homes into small HMOs for up to 6 residents. Following a full public consultation, published notices and 2 engagement sessions, Council approved this step in November 2025. No formal objections were received, and the direction can now be confirmed as planned. Confirming it ensures we retain control over future HMO conversions, protect our residential areas and give certainty to our communities. Mr. Mayor, this Conservative administration will continue to take the necessary decisions to protect Hillingdon's neighbourhoods. I move the recommendations as set out in the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Tuckwell. And seconding, Councillor Edwards, I think.
Yes, I do second and reserve my rights. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Apparently not. Is that agreed then? Thank you very much. So straight on then to agenda item 7, the community safety strategy. And I'm calling Councillor Bridges, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm pleased to move the Safer Hillingdon Partnerships Community Safety Strategy for 26 to 29, a strategy shaped by strong evidence, resident feedback and committed partnership working across the borough. This strategy fulfills our statutory duties under the Crime and Disorder Act 1998, ensuring we work together to reduce crime, disorder, substance misuse and reoffending in Hillingdon. It has been developed through extensive engagement, including a borough-wide survey with 779 responses, followed by a 6-week statutory consultation where residents highlighted concerns around antisocial behaviour, women's safety, police visibility and CCTV coverage. These views have directly shaped the final document before us here this evening. The strategy identifies 4 priority areas: safer neighbourhoods, violence against women and girls, serious violence and preventing harm and safeguarding communities. These priorities reflect our strategic needs assessment set out clearly that residents remain deeply concerned about domestic burglary, drug dealing, knife crime, shoplifting and antisocial behaviour. The approach is practical, structured and focused. It ensures we not only respond to incidents but works proactively to prevent harm, protect the vulnerable and hold offenders to account. I want to acknowledge the vital contributions of our partners, the Metropolitan Police, London Fire Brigade, National Probation Services, the Integrated Care Board and our voluntary and community organisations, whose collaboration underpins this entire strategy. And I also want to take this opportunity to thank both Councillor Palmer and Councillor Gardner for their roles in leading the borough's work on domestic abuse, a key element within the violence against women and girls priority. The strategy also recognises the modern realities of community safety, including online radicalisation, youth exploitation, serious violence and modern slavery, ensuring our response remains agile, evidence-led and forward-looking. Mr Mayor, this is a strong, resident-focused and partnership-driven plan, one that keeps Hillingdon on track as one of London's safest boroughs, and I therefore commend it to Council.
Thank you, Councillor Bridges. Councillor Edwards, please.
I do move seconded. Thank you.
Any further debate? No? Okay. Is that agreed then? Thank you. So on to agenda item 8, which is the 6-month performance report, and I'm calling Councillor Edwards, please.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. I'm pleased to move this report. Again, it provides evidence to our residents of the effectiveness and efficiency of this council. I'm very pleased to see that we continue to be amongst the very lowest spending of authorities per head of population. In fact, it's interesting to note that all 4 of the lowest spending authorities are Conservative. There are many examples in this report of continued good performance by our officer team. It shows how effective we are, both in terms of service delivery and quality, as well as the cost effectiveness of our services. It is continued evidence of the performance of our officers, and we should be rightly proud of them. And it is a document that is available for public record, as residents should be able to very clearly understand what we are doing on their behalf and how we are performing in relation to other authorities. I do commend this report and the performance of our officers to this chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. I'm calling Councillor Lavery. Is it to second?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I second and reserve my right.
Okay, any further debate? No other speakers? Okay, Councillor Lavery, would you care to speak? No? Okay, is that agreed then? Thank you very much. So, straight on then to agenda item 9, the General Fund Revenue Budget, Housing Revenue Account and Capital Programme for 26-27, and I'm calling Councillor Richard Mills first, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just wish to move the suspension of Council Procedure Rule 14.4 in order to allow unlimited speaking time for the mover and seconder of the motion.
Sorry, is that seconded?
I second that, Mr Mayor.
Oh, hang on a moment. I beg your pardon, any speakers? Okay. Okay, so is that agreed then? Okay. At which point I then come to Councillor Lavery, please, if you would.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This will be the 20th time I have been in this chamber for a budget speech, but the first time I have delivered it. And therefore the first time I have had the opportunity to have had unlimited speaking rights. So we'll see how that goes. This budget is presented against a challenging backdrop for local authority finances, including our own. The challenges are acknowledged both in the budget paper and the Section 25 statement from the Corporate Director of Finance. This Conservative administration is maintaining its core policies of low council tax, low fees and charges, and becoming a modern, digitally enabled council. And you'll see those themes run through both the budget and the speech I will deliver. We are a low council tax borough with a proposed Band D rate of £1,534.95. The Hillingdon council tax rate is currently the second lowest across outer London boroughs and the lowest in the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy cohort of comparable boroughs. We would need a 17% rise just to be average. This shows the good value we have offered our residents over many years. We are a low fees and charges borough and proud of it. Taking our near neighbour comparator group, our outstanding children's services have the third lowest cost at £126 per head below the average. Our good adult services are the lowest in our comparator group and are £63 per head below the average. We are moving towards being a digitally enabled modern council, which will enable our residents to make it easier to find information and interact with the council. You have all seen the revised council website and the greater ease with which that now works. This is being backed up with lots of work in the background to enable all our systems to integrate together better, to provide better information and more transparency, and there's a lot more to come in the coming weeks and months. The approach of this Conservative administration can be best summed up as leaving as much money as possible in the pockets of residents by sound financial management. Before I talk in detail regarding the 26-7 budget, I will deal with some of the background to council finances. Hillingdon has a growing population, which is up some 11.7% between the 2011 and 2021 census data. The council budget challenges have come from being underfunded over many years and three principal areas of expenditure. Adult social care, including learning disabilities, is some 38% of our net service spend. Children's services is some 22%, and these two alone are some 60% of the net that we spend on council services in the general fund. The final TA bill, that's temporary accommodation bill within housing, for 25-26 will be in the region of £34 million. These areas have seen significant demand increases across recent years, which have not always been fully forecasted and have led to budget overspends. Inflation, particularly in adult social care, has been running at 8 to 12% across the various components of that service. The increase in minimum wage and national insurance costs imposed by the Labour government have strongly impacted costs, particularly in adult social care. Despite government funding promises, the council was not fully funded for these increases, and these were not funded at all for those who contract their services to the council, with a huge impact, in particular again, in social care. I'm sure later tonight I will be accused of financial mismanagement by having spent money on vulnerable residents by a party opposite that has never managed to explain what it would not do. Its approach can be best summed up as slogans and t-shirts, yes, proposals, no. Remember last year, the best they could manage was to object, and I gather that will be their approach later this evening. Which I find surprising in an election year. I mean, their election material, certainly in Colham and Cowley ward, says they are fighting garden waste. Not in this chamber, and certainly not in this budget proposal. So if you're going to fight it, you need to explain what you would do instead. Turning to funding, we have consistently maintained we've been underfunded, which is now recognised by the new fairer, not fair, funding formula. Contrary to the messages from Danny Beales and the local Labour Party, we have not had 125 million, and for those who laugh on the other side, this has actually been corrected by officers now in messages, and I hope I won't hear it again later this evening, but I live in hope. The increase in core funding over the next 3 years is £106 million, but with an assumption that £28.7 million comes from our residents by way of increased council tax of 4.99% over the next 3 years. And the table in the report clearly sets that out before anybody finds a way of disagreeing. The new funding will also need to cover inflation over the next 3 years, which is currently higher in key services than the prevailing rate of inflation generally. Despite recognising that we're underfunded today, this money is only being made available over the next 3 years, giving us a net shortfall of £65 million, which will need to be covered by EFS. This is not a bailout, this is a correction to council finances.
Hear, hear.
But if I put it in another way, it's a bit like being told, you're due a pay rise now, you should have a pay rise now, and you're being awarded it, but you can have a third of it now, and it also needs to cover rising prices for the next 3 years. So just think how you would feel about that. The new national funding formula makes no allowances for the cost of being a port authority at Heathrow, and the pressures this places on us in terms of asylum costs on the council, illegal parking around the airport, and all the other strains that the airport brings to us. And to correct a kind of mistake in the public sometimes who assume that we get a vast rates income from Heathrow, we don't. We get 30% of the total business rates levied in this borough. The changes to business rates proposed by the government create further risk to our funding, particularly as Heathrow has an increase in rateable value of 353%, which will almost certainly be appealed. The budget before you has been subject to extensive testing by both officers and elected members. It includes rebasing to reflect where our core spending has exceeded previous budgets in our high demand areas, many of which contain statutory provisions. The starting point for our key demand-led budgets in adult care, children's services and homelessness is the current demand trend forecasted for the next 12 months. The financial costs have been taken from these figures with appropriate inflation allowances. All of the proposals before you tonight are owned by council departments and their corporate directors. Turning to key proposals. The budget paper before you builds on the draft December budget, which has been subject to public consultation and review by select committees. The budget covers the 26-27 year with a 3-year MTFS forecast, although as is common, this is not fully balanced for the remaining 2 years of the 3-year period. There is a 5-year capital programme covering both general expenditure and the Housing Revenue Account HRA. The 5-year HRA programme is part of the 30-year business plan for the HRA. The General Fund covers some £302 million of expenditure, net of fees collected for services provided, and some £790 million of gross expenditure. Growth of £73 million including rebasing, with £12 million in children's social care, £18 million in adults and health, £33 million in resident services, including £22 million in homes and communities, covering housing pressures. There is an increase in fees and charges, but we will still be a low-charge borough.
Hear, hear.
As I mentioned earlier, the council tax increase of 4.99%, including the social care precept, is proposed. Given that we currently have one of the lowest Band D rates in London, we will remain a low-tax borough, as virtually all other London boroughs will be increasing by 4.99. Inflation projections have been remodelled to reflect the higher inflation we are seeing in the economy generally and in some of our key demand areas. For 26-7, we have allowed some 6.7% in adult social care, 5% in children's services and 5.4% in energy costs. The budget has been subject to consultation and we received 277 responses to that consultation, which is an increase from the 144 we had last year. Risks have been mitigated as reserves have been reset to 40 million by the EFS award this week, and this is considered acceptable by the Corporate Director of Finance. The budget also contains a contingency amount of some £10 million for unforeseen items. Turning to the savings programme, the Council has set ambitious savings targets over the last 20 years, remembering that we are spending residents' money. The benchmarking of our services against other boroughs consistently shows this council provides services at low cost, which reflects the work of the Conservative administration over the last 20 years. I challenge those both inside and outside of this chamber who believe there is substantial efficiency to be driven in council services to give up on the slogans and get real. What would you actually do? What proposals do you actually have? The programme for 24/5 will fall short of the original ambitious 38 million, but will still achieve some 19 million in the 25/6 year, with a further 4.8 million subject to slippage into the next financial year. For 26/7, we have a fully costed and tested programme of £21 million spread across council services with no cross-cutting items. All savings are owned by corporate directors and are detailed in Appendix A4 of the papers before you. A little bit on EFS, or Emergency Financial Support. Despite the tight management of council finances over many years, it has not been possible to fully balance the budget. Before I talk about EFS, it is worth noting the change in the burden of funding that has occurred since 2010-11 under both Labour and Conservative governments, where local authority funding has dropped 63%, while government department funding has increased by 71%. In essence, more of the burden of funding services, including those that we are required to provide by law, has fallen locally. The council must set a balanced budget and only has the following funding sources: government revenue support grant, a portion of the business rates, fees and charges, and council tax. This year's budget is balanced by emergency financial support, and in part this is required as the Labour government has chosen to provide the money we are due over 3 years. The way EFS works is somewhat technical, but in simple terms, it allows you to treat a portion of your current or revenue expenditure as capital spending. This creates a balance sheet asset that you pay for over time by amortising over 20 years. So therefore, it is not free money. A mortgage would be not a bad description. The creation of this intangible asset enables you to borrow against the asset to fund day-to-day cash flow. In our case, we have obtained an in-principle letter from the government giving it for an £88 million item for the 25/26 year that is just about to complete, which will enable us to restore our reserves to 40 million. The actual amount drawn will reflect the need, as the requested figure does have a contingency for any year-end adjustments. Our cash flow needs will be determined on an ongoing basis as part of normal treasury management activity, and this will determine how much borrowing is actually taken. We also have a £62 million in principle agreement for the 26/7 year, which does cover the deficit in the budget before you. Capital spending. We have a proud record of delivering high-quality capital projects to improve the services available to all of our residents. These include the new Platinum Leisure Jubilee Centre at West Drayton, which I had the pleasure of visiting recently, a new Uxbridge Library, and I seem to remember many members on the other side totally objecting to, but those who visited it confirm it is a fantastic resource for the borough. Capital receipts have been helped in the last week or so by the sale of the old library building to a user in Bucks New University who will actually bring additional footfall into town, which is going to be very welcome. Yep. We have also provided additional SEND places, more affordable homes, including the first stage of the Hayes Regeneration Scheme, and the purchase of 200 plus homes last year. We also have an ongoing digital programme for the council. The capital programme has been closely reviewed to ensure it is deliverable and that borrowing remains prudent. The next 5-year programme is at a gross cost of £268 million, with significant items to include the Hillingdon Water Sports and Activity Centre, further Civic Centre transformation, the refurbishment of garage sites, giving us an opportunity to increase rental income, completion of the SEND provision at Meadow High School, adult care home capacity, and I couldn't leave out highway works, where we are one of only 2 green-rated authorities in London. and also works to the school estate. Turning to the housing revenue account, this is the ring-fenced account covering our social housing stock of some 10,000 homes. We were delighted earlier this year to get a C2 inspection rating from the regulator. We have an extensive capital programme, but this has been tested to ensure we remain within prudent borrowing limits given the increased construction costs on building projects that we are seeing currently. There is a 5-year programme of investment in upgrading existing stock and provision of additional homes. The Works to Stock programme is budgeted £194.5 million over the next 5 years and will significantly improve the lives of current tenants. There's a planned increase of 429 homes by 2030-31 from acquisitions and new home building. We are continuing the estate regeneration programme at Avondale and Hayes Town Centre, and the first homes in this project have now been delivered. We have other fully costed works including Hayden Drive and the Otterfields Way Falling Lane scheme in Useley. Must be the only time I've known that the Labour Party actually opposing the creation of more affordable homes, but there we go. The presentations of homelessness are continuing to rise with the need for temporary accommodation. This is a significant pressure on council resources, and we're continuing to seek ways to reduce this pressure. The HRA reserve remains stable at £15 million. Dedicated Schools Grant. The Dedicated Schools Grant DSG is in deficit because of the high needs funding block, which is the spending block that funds the needs of special needs pupils. This position is not unique to Hillingdon and reflects the cost of providing this support to our most vulnerable school pupils. From the month 9 monitoring report of this year, the in-year deficit is £9.6 million, a favourable position against budget, and gives us a projected end-of-year deficit of £75.5 million. The 26-7 deficit is projected to be £8.3 million in year. The reducing deficit reflects the hard work of the education team in managing costs and increasing places locally, work that has been acknowledged by the Department for Education. Yep. Council will be aware of the statutory override in place until March 28, and the recent government announcements that 90% of deficits will be funded by central government. This is welcomed by the Council. Mr Mayor, the budget proposals have been carefully considered and represent good value for our residents. We will continue to put residents first as we transform this council into a modern, digitally enabled council. I'm expecting some theatrics from the opposition, but as usual they will offer no benefits to our residents. Just as the last 20 years, they've always presented uncosted proposals demanding further spending. They have also managed to oppose every sensible move we have made. My key challenge is, what would you not do, or how would you do it better? Mr Mayor, in summary, these proposals have been carefully costed to continue to offer high-quality services at low cost to our residents. I would like to thank the Corporate Director of Finance and his team for their hard work and long hours in drawing up this budget. I move the recommendations.
Okay, is that seconded? Councillor Edwards.
Yes, I do second and reserve my rights to speak at the end of the debate, please. Thank you.
Okay, any other speakers? Councillor Manager.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In accordance with the Constitution, the Labour Group formally moves its objection to the Cabinet's budget recommendations. I would like to start by thanking officers for the hard work that has gone into preparing this budget under very difficult circumstances. Our responsibility as members is not just to acknowledge effort, but is to ensure that this budget approved at Council is credible, robust and deliverable. The Cabinet asked members to back a major savings programme that the Section 25 opinion brands as continued material risk. Section 25 isn't just a footnote, it's a law telling us to judge whether the estimates, reserves and delivery capacity are actually up to the job. Mr Mayor, in response to Councillor Lavery, we are not required to amend the budget, especially not one that is dependent on government bailout. Our objection is therefore rooted in deliverability, governance, transparency and leadership accountability. So let's look at deliverability and financial realism. Our concern is that this budget relies heavily on a savings programme built on assumptions and future delivery that are not yet fully evidenced. Our concern is that the Council's poor track record in achieving savings delivery. Only last year, Conservative members blindly approved a budget that began to fall apart by month 2. Our concern is that this Council is in a stabilisation and recovery phase. In that context, members must demand a higher standard of evidence before approving ambitious savings assumptions. Let's look at governance, control and financial environment. Our concern is that the controls simply aren't embedded or working consistently, and without disciplined governance, even the best intentioned financial plans will collapse in delivery. Our concern is there is still no solid evidence that governance and oversight are strong enough to deliver these savings on time. Recent history shows plans slip, pressures surface late, and forecasts fall apart. Our concern is the safeguards simply don't match the scale of the risk. No credible contingency except for more EFS borrowing, no clear trigger points for corrective action, and insufficient clarity on strengthened monitoring arrangements. Let's look at financial systems, transparency and scrutiny, shall we? Our concern is that this Council's financial systems haven't delivered the transparency or grip needed to manage the budget. Oracle failed to do what was promised, and even senior officers have admitted oversight and data quality have been inadequate. So the question is obvious. How can robust budgets be produced when the accounting system itself has been failing to provide reliable, timely information? Our concern is that members have not been given sufficient clarity around the modelling of savings and growth. In scrutiny committees, I repeatedly asked for explanations of how these figures were derived. You cannot scrutinise what you cannot see. Our concern is that growth wasn't growth at all. It was rebasing and correction dressed up as investment. That alone exposes how weak the forecasting and assumptions have been. And with financial systems still not fit for purpose, who can seriously claim those assumptions have been properly stress tested?
Councillor, wind up, please.
Okay. Well,
you
I will
conclude
just say,
your remarks.
Sorry?
Would you conclude your remarks, please?
I will indeed. Mr Mayor, our duty is not simply to approve a budget, but is to ensure it can be actually delivered. Another budget that fails mid-year creates unbearable...
All right, Councillor Plunger.
Services and long-term financial stability of this Council.
Councillor, thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. Is that seconded? Yeah. Okay.
And I reserve my right, thank you.
So you're seconding and reserve your right. Okay, so...
Mr Mayor, if I could, just for clarification of members in the room, we're now debating the proposed objection, which is set out on page 7 and the very top of page 8 on the order paper.
Okay, so we're now speaking to the amendment which has been moved. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. I don't know whether it was intended to be, but I found that to be incredibly insulting to the professionalism of our officers. Yeah. I find it an amazing attack on their professionalism, the diligence of their duties, and they do it in a way when the officers have to sit and listen and don't have the opportunity to defend themselves. Yeah. But let me return to what I was going to say. Yet again, the opposition have ducked their responsibility to the voters to set out their alternative spending priorities for this council. On the even election, Labour voters might have reasonably expected to hear an alternative vision, a challenge of what Hillingdon Conservatives intend to deliver over the next years and beyond. On the doorstep, as we've heard, Labour are promising voters they will reverse the garden waste charge, but they haven't the courage to explain to council how this would be paid for. They know the only alternative is to push up council tax even higher, to make those without gardens pay for those with. But rather than being honest with residents, they are trying to hide their inadequacy by repeating their procedural grumblings. Their objection is based on a mixture of misunderstanding and outright rejection of the facts. In paragraph 3 of the motion, they question whether the 2026-27 budget can be delivered within a defined and realistic timescale. It shows complete ignorance. The budget sets the council tax requirement for the financial year, 6th of April to the 5th of April. It authorises expenditure within the year, and it controls officers' powers because officers may only incur expenditure within the approved framework. The timescale could not be more precise, and by law, council can only pass a budget for the next financial year. As I have said, paragraph 4 of their motion is insulting to the Chief Financial Officer and his team. To describe their many months of detailed challenge and scrutiny of service spending plans as high-level modelling is dismissive of their professionalism and rigour they have provided. Labour are seeking to replace the professional judgment of the Section 151 officer concerning the robustness of the budget report because it doesn't support their narrative nor this objection motion. Paragraph 5 sets out Labour's own view of what should be the test before us, but the statutory test is clear, and on each of the tests, the Section 151 officer has given his assurance, as is helpfully been summarised at paragraph 11 of the budget report. The only reasonable explanation for Labour ignoring this is that they cannot come up with their own credible alternative vision for this council. Their budget amendments since the last election would have driven financial costs through the roof.
Could you wind up, Councillor Edwards, please?
Years ago.
Thank you.
I object.
Any other speakers on the objection? Oh, here we go. Who have we got? Councillor Mills, please. Councillor Douglas Mills.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't going to speak to this Labour amendment until I realised how bad it was. Not only just endorse what Councillor Edwards said about an attack on officers who can't respond in a meeting like this, but what we've seen tonight is from Hillingdon Labour, the whole wheels of their argument have come off. They have been arguing, some of you will recall, if we go back 4 years, just before the council election in 22, they were arguing, we are about, as a council, to go bankrupt. And they've said that every year, and they have been proved absolutely inaccurately wrong. They are wrong, wrong, wrong. This council has never been bankrupt, isn't bankrupt, and is not going to be bankrupt. Now, in terms of bankruptcy, what we have from Hillingdon Labour Party is a bankruptcy of ideas as to how to cope with the financial situation that we're finding ourselves in. They talk as if getting the EFS funding is some kind of slur on both the Cabinet and the officers of this council. Hillingdon is not alone in receiving this funding. Indeed, let me just say there are 9, I believe, 9 London authorities this year that are about to get it. Let me just quote 2 of them. Waltham Forest. Now, when I last looked, that's not been Conservative for many, many years. So if it's so bad to get EFS funding and is a disgrace to the political leadership and to the officers of that authority, then that's what she's saying to the Labour leadership of Waltham Forest and the officers that sit there. Then there is Lambeth Council. Now, Lambeth Council, I have quite a lot of knowledge of, having started there. And I won't give you my Peter Manderson story, not tonight anyway. The situation is there that Lambeth actually gets additional support far above many other local authorities in London, and yet they're having to get EFS funding. So the Labour Party in Hillingdon are saying the Labour leadership in Lambeth are a failure. So that's the fault in their argument. This council is not bankrupt. The only bankruptcy comes from the lack of ability for them to put forward an alternative budget whilst going out on the door and saying to residents, oh, we can do this, we can do that. They haven't got a Scooby-Doo as to what to do. But that's the other reality. They will be presenting, if they get back in that front bench, the smallest Labour group in this authority since the 1980s. That's what they've achieved since they got rid of Councillor Curling.
Speaking of Councillor Curling, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The new funding formula from the Labour government and the exceptional financial support all come with strings attached and include things like a maximum council tax rise for the next 3 years. And this is from a Prime Minister who, just before the general election, gave guarantee that no one would pay a penny more in council tax. Whether Hillingdon's problems are due to a lack of funding or poor financial management is for the Labour and Conservative groups to debate. I would suggest it's a bit of both. There's no doubt that the last Conservative government not only cut our funding to the bone, but they actually cut into the bone. I also think that in Hillingdon there was a general denial that things were so bad, and Hillingdon's administration fell into a king's new clothes approach when it came to the finances. I've felt for some time that one of Hillingdon's biggest problems is the lack of open and honest scrutiny. When the last cabinet decision successfully called in was around 2 decades ago, it gives some idea of how welcome open and honest scrutiny has been. I believe that the outgoing administration and whoever makes up the incoming administration need to ensure that the governance and scrutiny are given the priority that they need in order to avoid any return to a king's new clothes mindset, especially around the finances. As an independent group, we have a policy of every vote being a free vote, and that's especially important when it comes to the budget. Personally, I can't vote for the Labour objection, and I can't vote for the budget, especially as it includes the unavoidable Labour government-imposed 3-year maximum council tax rise. So although I appreciate that there's very little alternative, I will be abstaining on both the Labour amendment and the budget itself. Mr Mayor, I would like to finish by thanking the officers and staff for all their hard work in ensuring that the services to our residents continue to be delivered. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Okay, I think at this point we come to Councillor Mathers then, please. You seconded reserve right.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I second this objection because it is necessary, rooted in the financial reality this council now faces. In 2022, this council held 74 million in reserves. Today, under this Conservative administration, we're faced with a projected minus 31 million, 105 million in resilience lost by this administration. And these outcomes do not exist in isolation. Paragraph 15 of the Section 25 report says that they are cumulative effects of structural funding pressures, obvious savings assumptions, demand volatility, erosions of reserves, and weaknesses in financial systems and control. All as a result of political decisions taken over many years by those entrusted with financial leadership. It is the Conservative administrations, and in some cases the same individuals, who oversaw the erosion of the council's financial resilience. We are now asking members to accept, once again, that their assumptions will deliver without providing transparent, detailed workings as called for in this objection. We have had year after year of unidentified saving in budgets. Under former Cabinet members of Finance, when Councillor Bianco was Finance Cabinet member, he failed to build sustainable resilience in a prudent financial way to prepare the council for the future. Reserves should have been strengthened then. Councillor Goddard, when he was Member of Finance, pursued financial experiments that did not deliver, promised transformation, time-consuming zero-based budgets, refusing EFS as something of a bad option, whilst underlining financial position weakened. And under the current Cabinet Member for Finance, Councillor Lavery, we see a continued reliance on significant saving assumptions. 10.4 million this year written out as not possible, 4.6 million with serious problems to be delivered, and only 35% of savings banked. Last year it was cost-cutting savings. Now these have been abandoned. Not much more has been abandoned when it comes to assumptions. Yet today members are asked to approve a budget that the Chief Finance Officer has considered is set in the context of continual material risk. Last year the Conservatives ignored the warnings and objections from Hillingdon Labour, leaving the 25-26 budget this year unravelling within a couple of months. Now the real risk is approving assumptions without scrutiny, especially given the precarious nature of the Council's financial position. This Council must show the details, the workings and the methods behind the assumptions. Only then can councillors fully consider the budget deliverability. Let's remind ourselves that this Council is in recovery mode and it requires reassurance, evidence, transparency, as well as credible and detailed plans from this Conservative administration. This objection is about ensuring that mistakes of the past are not repeated in the future. Responsible councillors do not ignore risk, they address it. And I urge members to support this objection.
So, Councillor Lavery, you moved the budget motion. You have the right to speak on the objection.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. For the second year in a row, the opposition have nothing to offer residents. No proposals, no ideas. Not quite sure what they're going to write in their election leaflets, but I'll leave that to them. The budget acknowledges the risks and has appropriate controls and mitigations in place. Previous spend and current budget position have been taken into account before assessing current demand. Assumptions have been tested by both the corporate directors, the corporate finance team and Cabinet. The Chief Finance Officer Section 25 statement confirms that governance, challenge and reassurance have been considered in reaching his Section 25 opinion. The Section 25 statement confirms the statutory test in respect of robust estimates and adequacy of reserves is met. We will not be supporting this objection.
Thank you. And back to Councillor Bowyer.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Well, blah, 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 blah. Same song, different night. The leader always chooses to take our concerns to blame officers. We're not blaming officers, we're blaming you. The administration isn't interested in producing a robust budget, credible or deliverable. Like ostriches with heads in the sand, they would rather make the same mistakes again with full knowledge that they've acted too slow in remedying the financial disaster that their own political choices have brought to this council. This administration is unwilling to confront its own record and determined to repeat it. They talk about prudence, yet the Cabinet's own report admits that the Conservative governments have failed to update funding formulas for over a decade and then stripped out a further 4.8 million. That was their government, that was their choice. And knowing all of that, successive Conservative administrations still took this council down a reckless financial path, leaving residents with £150 million of exceptional financial support to just keep the lights on. It was this Labour government that updated the funding formulas, Councillor Douglas Mills, stepped in with support to prevent Section 114 and tackled the spiralling high needs, that deficit that had become a millstone around this council's neck. Out of more than 300 councils in England, only 35 required emergency bailout support this year. Hillingdon received the 4th largest in the country, the 2nd largest in London. That is not bad luck, that is bad management. Every council faced underfunding, every council faced pressures. The difference is this: others planned, built reserves and managed risks. Ealing is investing £30 million in its communities in its 26-27 budget, while this council's finances hang on a shoestring. This administration ignored warning signs and left no room for error. And it's not just the opposition saying this. Successive chief financial officers have escalated their Section 25 warnings from medium risk to high risk to continued material risk. External auditors have disclaimed 3 consecutive years of accounts and made that recovery will take years if only strict conditions are met. So when we hear lectures about plans of what we will do, the real step change this council needs is not yet another recycled proposals and promises from the same leadership. This real step change will come when residents deliver it themselves on May the 7th at the ballot box.
Thank you. We now come to the vote. I'll hand over to Lloyd.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. At this point, I remind members that in accordance with the Local Authority Standing Orders Regulations 2014, named votes are taken on all votes to do with the budget. So I will ask members in order if they are voting in favour of the proposed objection to the budget as set out on page 7 to page 8, moved by Councillor Punja, seconded by Councillor Mathers, against or abstaining. Councillor Abbey.
Abstain.
Councillor Ahmad Walana.
Against.
Councillor Banerjee. Councillor Bassett.
Abstain.
Councillor Batt. Councillor Bianco. Councillor Bridges. Councillor Burles. Councillor Chubadar. Councillor Curling. Councillor Davies. Councillor Dennis. Councillor Dott. Councillor Edwards. Councillor Farley. Councillor Gardner. Councillor Gaelic. Councillor Gill. Councillor Gohill. Councillor Hagger. Councillor Higgins. Councillor Islam. Councillor Kaur. Councillor Lakmana. Councillor Lavery. Councillor Makwana. Councillor Mand. Councillor Martin. Councillor Mathers. Councillor Douglas Mills. Councillor Richard Mills. Councillor Nelson West. Councillor O'Brien. Councillor Punja. Councillor Riley. Councillor Sansapuri. Councillor Singh. Councillor Smallwood. Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Sweeting. Councillor Tuckwell. Mr Mayor.
Against.
Mr Mayor, that proposed objection has been lost by, I believe, 24 votes to 13, and we therefore return to the original motion as moved by Councillor Lavery, set out on the order paper, which we...
Okay, so I think we're... Who have we got? Any more speakers on the budget motion? Councillor Sansapuri, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, tonight we are told this is a responsible stabilizing budget for 26-27 at Hillingdon Council. But let's call it what it is. This is not an investment budget. This is not a transformation budget. This is a rebasing budget. We are not funding any new ambitions. We are not improving services. We are resetting them to the level where we can now afford after years of just guessing what our service cost. Mr. Mayor, the language used is rebasing to reflect the true underlying cost of service sound technical. But what it really means, it is that previous budgets were unrealistic, guesswork, full of optimism bias, and residents are now facing the consequences. Temporary accommodation cost rebased, social care pressure rebased, transformation capital rebased, central service like corporate budget rebased. I could go on. None of that represents improvement, it represents correction. We are told governance is strengthening, controls are tightening, and saving ownership is clearer. But those are the repairs to the system that should never have been allowed to weaken in the first place. It is not happening now. It is not happening fast enough to save our residents from the burden of the cost of exceptional financial support. Mr. Mayor, underfunding, I will say it again, underfunding didn't allow our system to weaken. Neglect, weak leadership, and administrative management did. Now we are moving at snail pace because of year after year of managed vacancies to meet saving after removed this council of staffing capacity to do the job. And while this administration is speak of stability, residents will see something different. Higher charges, tighter eligibility, leaner service, and fewer choices. Rebasing is not growth. Stabilization is not progress. And balancing the book after plummeting to the brink of bankruptcy is not success story. This budget is not about recovery or renewal. It is fixing yesterday's problems, not building tomorrow opportunities. Residents deserve more than managed decline dressed up as prudence. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. We come to Councillor Bianco, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Much has been made in the national news about the housing crisis affecting so many families in the UK, and we in Hillingdon are certainly not exempt. As you will have heard, and will probably hear again from my colleagues, the problems are present here too. My colleague Councillor Lavery has already outlined the severity of the issue in this borough, and I've no doubt that Councillor Tuckwell will add a few comments later. The good news, however, is that we haven't been idle in trying our best to mitigate this problem, both by buying street properties and by developing new stock. And to that end, as has already been mentioned, we have already completed the first 2 phases of the Hayes Regen project, with 30 new flats at Avondale Drive built and occupied, and 92 flats in Hayes Town Centre now completed and to be occupied shortly. Going forward, this year's capital budget contains plans to continue this good work, with the next phases of Avondale underway and ultimately producing considerably more flats, and the next phases of Hayes Town Centre to follow shortly. And in addition, as has already been mentioned, we have just started work on a site in my own ward, Northwood Hills, with Hayden Drive, which will deliver 21 much-needed 3 and 4 bedroom houses, and we will also continue the development in Useley, next to the recreation ground, over which there was so much aggravation and opposition. But actually, what are we doing? We're producing 94 flats there. Outside of our residential developments, we have recently completed the fantastic new Platinum Leisure Centre in West Drayton, yes, in the south of the borough, and this is due to open in time for Easter holidays. So please go down there and see what a fantastic scheme it is. It is a truly state-of-the-art, top-notch leisure facility that any borough in the UK would be proud to have delivered for its residents. And on top of this, as you have heard this evening, we have successfully sold the old Uxbridge Library site. On an educational front, another headline grabber of late is the continued pressures on SEND, Special Education Needs and Disability. Once again, Hillingdon is on the front foot. In the current year, we delivered a new special school extension at Meadows School in Royal Lane, as well as several smaller projects in existing schools. And this year, we will deliver a brand new satellite facility for Meadows School at Harefield. The cost of these projects is not insignificant, but the payoff for the well-being of our residents ensures that this will be money well spent. All these projects underline this Conservative administration's commitment to the varied needs of the borough's residents and demonstrate once again our ability to deliver good quality services at fair and reasonable costs. Mr. Mayor, I support this budget.
Thank you. Councillor Tuck, please.
Right behind Councillor Bianco. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No debate on this budget can ignore the pressures our residents face on housing and homelessness. Demand continues to rise, temporary accommodation costs are escalating right across London, and families are approaching councils in growing numbers. In moments like this, the difference between rhetoric and responsibility is very clear. This Conservative administration has chosen responsibility. We are strengthening our approach to prevent homelessness before it occurs. We are investing in the housing revenue account to increase our housing stock and continuing to maintain and improve the safety and quality of our existing homes. Mr. Mayor, we have listened to the Labour group in this chamber many times. And what would Labour's answer be? Spend more, promise more, commit more. They never acknowledge the financial realities facing local government. Make no mistake, some groups push simplistic solutions, Labour with limitless spending, and Reform UK with empty rhetoric. But this Conservative administration delivers year after year. Thanks also to Councillor Lavery and the officers whose disciplined financial management allows us to deliver for residents where others only promise. It is easy to oppose, it is much harder to govern. The housing crisis is real, the financial pressures are real, and when budgets are tight, the temptation, particularly from those opposite, is to treat everything else as secondary. Even as we tackle homelessness and housing demand, we cannot allow everyday infrastructure of this borough to decline. That is why this budget continues to invest in our highways, so residents can continue to benefit from safe, well-maintained roads, pavements and street lighting. While some Labour councils elsewhere cut back on core services, this administration will face the financial challenges without neglecting the basics. Even as we invest in homes, highways and essential services, Hillingdon still enjoys some of the lowest council tax levels in London. This budget also supports investment in our town centres and the borough's economy, ensuring Hillingdon remains a place where residents and businesses can thrive. This budget reflects serious leadership in serious times, compassion backed by discipline, investment backed by affordability, and action backed by realism. This administration will continue to deliver a Hillingdon that is safe, prosperous and well served. A borough residents can rely on now and for generations to come. That is the difference between opposition politics and responsible Conservative leadership. Mr. Mayor, words are easy. Leadership is measured in action, and that is what this Conservative administration provides. Thank you.
Councillor Bridges, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight's budget is presented against a backdrop of significant financial challenge for our authority, and the reports before members make that perfectly clear. But they also show something equally important. Even in this environment, we are protecting investment in our communities, our green spaces and our frontline services, all within a far stronger and more disciplined financial framework. Our Community and Environment Capital Programme remains firmly on a stable footing, with 4.4 million forecast in year against a £7.3 million budget, and crucially programmes supporting green spaces, waste improvements and local environmental enhancements remain funded across the 5-year plan. On the revenue side, the Month 9 monitoring report identifies 2.6 million of opportunities of resident services, including funding that helps us sustain waste collection and other frontline operations despite inflation and rising demand. At the same time, we continue to manage pressures such as homelessness, challenges intensified by Hillingdon's role as a major port authority. But we are doing so through improved oversight and active risk management. Importantly, Mr Mayor, the Chief Finance Officer's Section 25 statement confirms that the 26-27 estimates are as robust as possible. And with confirmation of EFS, our reserves are sufficient to set a lawful and balanced budget this evening. This follows strengthened governance, better forecasting discipline and the reinstatement of a £10 million contingency, a sign of our increasing financial resilience. Mr Mayor, this is a responsible and prudent budget. It protects vital investment, safeguards key services and reflects a clearer, more stable financial positions for the year ahead. While challenges remain, the direction is unmistakable. Stronger governance, greater resilience and an unwavering commitment to the services of our residents who rely on them the most. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dennis, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Tonight has reaffirmed that it is Hillingdon Conservatives who work hard and make the best choices for our residents, while Labour run away from responsibility. 2 council meetings ago, Labour proposed a motion that would have taken decision-making powers away from councillors, instead asking Whitehall to decide what is best for Hillingdon residents. Tonight, their proposed amendment to the budget was against having a budget. Mr Mayor, we have a legal responsibility to pass a budget. We also have a moral responsibility to govern for those who voted for us. Once again, it is Hillingdon Conservatives putting residents first. Hillingdon Labour, I think, put residents third, behind the wishes of Keir Starmer and the diktats of London Labour. Where are Labour when it comes to lobbying government for Hillingdon to get its fair funding today, not in 3 years? Nowhere. Instead, they think fair funding is some sort of prize that we should be grateful to win, and the taxpayers' money is a government gift. It is not a government gift. Where were Labour when Hillingdon residents had to pay for the direct consequences of government policy, which we were not refunded for? Nowhere. Not a peep. But what Labour have done is try to block every single initiative to improve how the council operates. Uxbridge Library. Apparently moving Uxbridge Library 500 metres up the road to create a better library, a more accessible library, a cheaper library to run, as well as allowing the council to sell the previous site and make money to reinvest in services, was one of the worst ideas Hillingdon Labour had ever heard of. Despite the financial pressures caused by the Labour government's underfunding of local authorities, Hillingdon Council still delivers a high standard of social care and children's services, and that is confirmed by independent inspections. We look after our most vulnerable residents, and we're proud to do that. And there is money to invest in leisure centres, our great green spaces, community assets such as libraries, homes for homeless people, and a care home for the elderly. We also continue to invest in the infrastructure of the council. We are always looking to make the council better because our residents deserve the best services at the best value. Mr Mayor, Labour offer no hope. They have no ideas. They have no future. Hillingdon Conservatives put Hillingdon residents first, always. I support this budget as it offers the best outcomes for those who live in this borough, and that is what we're elected to do.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Mann, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I stand to speak against this budget because in 3 years we have had 3 different chief financial officers offering their statutory opinions on the budget, going from bad to worse to critical. It is critical because this budget cannot be balanced without exceptional financial support from the Labour government. Damning for this Conservative administration, who prides itself on financial prudence, this budget is being set with a context of continued material risk. Let's look at why. Paragraph 15.
The Council's financial resilience has weakened materially over the period 22-23 to 25-26. This did not arise from a single decision or event, but from the cumulative effect of structural funding pressures, ambitious savings, assumptions, demand volatility, erosion of reserves, and weaknesses in financial systems and control. Paragraph 22. The Council adopted substantial savings programmes. The deliverability of certain proposals was not always underpinned by sufficiently detailed implementation, planning, or robust contingency arrangements. Paragraph 23. There was evidence of optimism bias in the assumptions underpinning savings delivery. Where these assumptions did not materialise, the financial impact crystallised as in-year overspends. Paragraph 26. The Council balanced successive budgets through the use of reserves. While reserves exist to manage timing differences and unforeseen pressures, reliance upon them to balance recurring gaps progressively weakens financial resilience. The erosion of reserves has reduced flexibility and limited the Council's resilience in the face of in-year variances. It has ultimately led to the reliance on EFS as a stabilisation mechanism. Paragraph 31. Working paper quality and the financial statement preparation processes have been found wanting. The closure of 24-25 accounts has required external support to deliver and show improvement, but this ultimately needs to be taken fully in-house. So is it a wonder, Mr. Mayor, that despite all the corrective measures, the Chief Financial Officer deems this budget worse than last year, marking it as continued material risk? He says, and I quote, "The estimates used in setting the budget are as robust as can reasonably be achieved given the information available." Given the information available. What information? Mr. Mayor, we are not confident, given the information available, that this budget will be delivered. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. Councillor O'Brien, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hillingdon has the third lowest children's social care spend per 100,000 children. However, our outcomes remain consistently high. Our front door receives on average over 20,000 requests for help and support every year. We continue to maintain lower numbers of looked after children than the national picture. Our children in need and children protection plan rates are lower than national and statistical neighbour averages. Care proceedings have fallen to the lowest rate in the country, as confirmed by CAFCAS. 25-26 focused on ensuring children can live and learn within their local communities, with 14 new fostering households and 14 more in the pipeline, as well as 12 new residential beds for our most vulnerable young people. These changes mean residential care is used as an intervention, not a destination, supported by a trauma-informed approach. In youth justice, early intervention continues to make a significant difference. We now have the fourth lowest first-time entrance rate, custody usage is below London averages, and reoffending remains lower than our statistical neighbours. Our services are on track to deliver all 25-26 savings, with further efficiencies identified for 26-27. Education and SEND has also seen substantial improvement. We have the fourth lowest net expenditure among statistical neighbours, yet outcomes remain strong. Demand and management in SEND is stabilising with reduced requests and assessments. Across our schools, 93% are rated good or better. Inclusion continues to improve. On primary national offer day, 91% of families received their first choice school. On secondary offer day, every child received a school place. For young people with the HCPs, we've seen a 3% reduction in NEET, and supported internships have increased by 13%, with participation rising from 3 to 16% in the post-16 cohort. Nearly 88% of post-16 EHCP learners are now placed in Borough, up from 21% on the previous year. Early years outcomes are up, with 71% achieving a good level of development, including 58% of disadvantaged children. High needs, we continue to reduce the in-year deficit from 25 million in 23-24 to a forecasted 9.6 million at the end of this year, with the DfE recognising the strength of our plans. 26-27 focuses continue with delivering identified savings, strengthening our care offer, expanding our non-stigmatising family hubs, improving inclusion and local provision, and readiness for the SEND reforms.
You wind up, please, Councillor O'Brien.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'm done. I'm pleased to support this budget.
Thank you.
You very much.
Councillor Corr.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The budget is only as sound as the foundation it rests upon, and no responsible member should approve a structure when the foundations are in doubt. If they're so responsible, then why, when EY came before the Audit Committee in January 2026, they expressed grave disappointment that members had not been given sight of their draft findings finalised in November, despite the Council's precarious financial position? Even the independent chair could not recall discussing early access with the CFO. The deputy leader of the Hillingdon Labour Group was told it was inappropriate to see the report clearly. The auditors did not agree. After a Section 24 notice and 7 statutory recommendations last July, this administration has acted nowhere near enough and nowhere near fast enough. EY was unequivocal. Significant cost pressures emerged after the 25-26 budget was set, exactly as did the year before. Risks underestimated, forecasts unreliable, controls insufficient. This is not prudence. It is repeated pattern of failure. And this matters directly for this budget. EY said they are not satisfied that last year's recommendations have been implemented. They identified core systemic risks, poor quality management information, overstretched finance capacity, and the flawed implementation of Oracle Fusion Cloud ERP and Oracle EPM. These are not technical tweaks. These are failures at the heart of financial control. Failures that remain unresolved as this budget is being put before us. Is that prudence? Even more concerning, EY stated they do not have assurance that the 24-25 in-year movements are accurate, not that the financial statements are free from material misstatement. If auditors cannot trust the numbers, how can we build a credible budget on that? They also draw attention to material uncertainty about Council's ability to continue as a going concern because the Council is reliant on exceptional government support. Is this stability? This is the same administration whose budget collapsed within 2 months in the last year. A 3-month delay in publishing draft financial statements only reinforces the deterioration in financial management. So today we are asked to believe that this budget is robust and sustainable, but it relies on Labour government bailout and is built on financial evidence that auditors themselves cannot verify. Hard questions still hang over previous year's budget. None of those questions have been answered. Is this sustainable? This is a failing budget from a failing administration. I cannot support it.
Thank you. Councillor Martin, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So what will our residents in Hillingdon know this evening? The residents of Hillingdon will be pleased to know that we have a balanced budget. This is great news for protecting the services and service levels that our borough has enjoyed for years under the Conservatives. They will also hear that our council is finally in support of additional, fairer funding from central government. The residents of the ward that I represent will be pleased to know that due to the prudent spending and responsible decision making that we've taken, that key services are protected for the years or the year ahead. The residents know they can trust us on the important things which matter to them on a daily basis. That's to have their bins collected on a weekly basis. That's despite a charge, the quality of the green waste collection will remain the same. That our green spaces will be kept well for families to enjoy. That if their children require additional education needs, the funding and help is there immediately and is rated highly and at a lower cost base than our neighbouring boroughs. They will also know if another adult in their family or someone they know begins to struggle, that our highly rated social care platforms will be available to them. They'll also know, despite some of the energetic campaign videos that we saw this week regarding potholes, that this council and this administration fixes more potholes than most of the country's boroughs that we see. Our officer teams are also committed to working harder than ever to ensure that the new HMO Article 4 legislation makes a real difference. We will hear criticism from our opponents on what we've said this evening, but it's easy to criticise the decision makers, and the decision takers always stand absolutely silent while their own party flip-flops and U-turns in central government. Some of those decisions are impacting this council's finances and the decisions we have to take. Hillingdon residents are being put first tonight. I therefore, of course, support this budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sweeting, please.
Thank you. Mr Mayor, I speak against this budget, but start by asking whether you were in the Civic Centre on the 9th of February to hear the huge sigh of relief and even possibly a whoop of joy from your Conservative colleagues when the news broke that the Labour government had announced that Hillingdon would receive a grant to cover 90% of its booming high needs deficit, projected to be £75.5 million, and still growing. No, I assume you didn't. Well, let me explain. Ever since the Conservative government delivered its schools bill in 2014, this administration took the view that the new regulations needed to be funded by government, so decided to sit on its hands and allowed the deficit to grow and grow. It was a political decision which this administration made when other councils, such as Ealing, took a different approach and kept their deficit to around £5 million. So did a Tory government, caught up with the mess of its own making, come to Hillingdon's rescue? Of course not. It either wouldn't or couldn't. So Hillingdon, with the highest high needs deficit of any council in London, was rescued by the Labour government, which took just months to deliver the welcome bailout. However, even with 90% sliced off the deficit, there are millions still owing. Hillingdon must now own the remaining deficit, still large, still growing by some 10 million a year, and totally homegrown. This budget states that the council will need to bear the residual and growing deficit itself, either through reserves, where there are currently none, savings, where these have never been met in past budgets, and with possibly more exceptional financial support from the Labour government. So even with the multi-millions from the new fair funding formula, the high needs bailout, and the exceptional financial support of 150 million, we are confronted with a wing and a prayer budget, promising that all will be well, just like the one approved by the party opposite last year, which within weeks splintered into thousands of pieces, each scrawled with the words financial incompetence. Nothing in this budget gives confidence that anything has changed. A budget yet again balanced by borrowing and more borrowing, and saving levels which have never, ever, ever been met. Another budget from this administration which needed life support to even exist. Thank you.
So before we come back to Councillor Edwards, who seconded, any other speakers at all? Okay, Councillor Gill, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Let me start by thanking all the officers for whatever hard work they do throughout the year. But this budget is not a fault of theirs. It's the fault of the choices made by this failed Conservative administration. For years, they have bragged about being a low-cost, low-spend council. But low cost doesn't mean being cheaper, and residents are paying the price. Just this month, Hillingdon was named the third worst borough to live in London, and that's not opposition spin. That's from My London earlier this month. Yet the administration celebrates being the fourth lowest in net expenditure. According to their own corporate performance report, they compare cost and not outcomes. It's like comparing apples with pears. Because only 58% of residents are actually satisfied with care, well below the London average, and that's their figures, not ours. And housing, the same performance. Reports show 30% of Hillingdon homes fail with a decent home standard. nearly double that of neighbouring Ealing. Residents can't even reach the council. One West Drayton resident waited 45 minutes on the phone just to report a repair and only be told to call again. That is what low cost really looks like. Meanwhile, this budget raises fees and charges across the board. Cremation fees have jumped from £681 to over £1,000 in the last 2 years. That's a 60% rise. Residents pay more while residents shrink faster, while services shrink faster. Library hours cut, a library closed. Youth provision disappearing. Community safety teams reduced. Street cleaners cut, voluntary sector funding cut, and even the out-of-hours services scaled back this April. Safety, fly tipping, potholes, litter, housing, the issues residents really care about and raise every single day remain unresolved and ever increasing. This is not financial prudence, Mr. Mayor. This is managed decline. The Conservatives built this budget on cheap headlines instead of strong services, and it has made our borough poorer, less safe, and less supported. Low cost is not leadership. It's failed up and dressed up as efficiency. The administration has made these choices, and they are unfit to run this council. Only Labour will deliver a borough that is safer, cleaner, and fairer, and a budget truly fit for purpose. Mr. Mayor, I stand against this budget.
Thank you. Councillor Bells, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I cannot support this budget. This is not a strategy, it's a sticking plaster. A budget propped up by exceptional financial support, covering up reckless decision-making, devoid of scrutiny or long-term planning. Reports are not written to inform decisions, they are cobbled together to justify them. Let's look at some of these decisions, shall we? My old favourite, Uxbridge Library, opportunistic. Fire safety was the excuse. Asset disposal was reality. A library marked in the town centre vision suddenly becomes expandable when the cash runs low. That's not planning, that is panic. Early years centres, short-sighted. These 3 centres lined up for closure because they cost too much. No innovation, no alternative model, just cuts. Only a residential campaign forced to rethink. Early intervention saves money. The administration nearly scrapped it. The Beck Theatre, shambolic. The Beck Theatre debacle, even, was fair to the absurd. Consultants hired, subsidy still paid, no long-term lease secured, housing plans waved around by Councillor Bianco, saying, yes, we considered it, but was then withdrawn after public backlash. All pain, no gain. Rural Activities Garden Centre, half-baked. A horticultural therapy centre, dismantled in a rush to cash in on the land. The largest petition in the borough ignored. Correcting council reports brushed aside. Equalities Act duties towards adults with learning disabilities sidelined. Safeguarding barely considered. The garden shop was closed because no one had grass, it was volunteer run. Assets of community value rules misunderstood. Action taken only when judicial review loomed. Not just embarrassing, amateur. Uxbridge Post Office, negligent. Closing in May, email confirmation from the Post Office that no alternative was secured, despite Councillor Tuckwell claiming it was in this very chamber only last month. Petition sent to Parliament and Post Office HQ. A town centre vision without a post office. Digital by default. Tell that to the elderly resident collecting a pension or the small business posting parcels. Conservatives have abandoned their own voters. Now a scramble to put the post office in the Civic Centre. Whatever next, a fish and chip shop maybe. Green waste charge, cynical. A broken manifesto promise, introduced to us to dodge financial reality. Raise less than promised, cost far more in trust. Cowley Meeting Hall, murky. Debts written off. Part 2 secrecy. A former Conservative councillor subletting under everyone's noses.
Councillor Bells, will you wind up, please?
Surgeries held there. A new Mr Mayor cut the ribbons. when the cafe opened, and yet no one knew.
Councillor Burns, could you conclude your remarks?
I cannot
Thank
support
you.
this budget.
Thank you. Councillor Mathers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It will be no surprise that I, like the rest of the Labour group, cannot support this budget. It's built on, as we have heard, many things. But what concerns me most is the delusion within the Conservative membership next to us, not aware of the lobbying that we've been doing to help support the need, unfortunately, for EFS, the DSG being written off, all things with great benefits to our residents alongside a fairer funding formula. And it may be that they've not read the paperwork. They may not see that throughout it, the Labour government is the ones that are coming to the rescue. This budget has required the government to step in where this Conservative administration did not know where to go next. And yes, as Councillor Tuckwell says, governing is difficult. It's very difficult. But moving everything close to you in the Civic Centre, just because you're scared to go to the communities, moving everything into the Civic Centre is not a solution that this budget brings that residents need. It is reactionary, it is not visionary. And we won't be accused of a lack of vision with a budget that just says exactly that. And then there's controversies. As Councillor Bells was saying, around the Cowley Meeting Hall and the debt owed by former Conservative councillors. What other debts and things are hiding within this budget that we have asked for through the objection with transparency, and transparency will lead to better accountability, and better accountability will lead for better services for our residents, and that is exactly what we need to achieve, and this budget doesn't do any of that.
Councillor Smallwood, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to sum up a couple of things members opposite start. I want to start with the dedicated schools grant, one of Councillor Sweeting's favourite topics. I'd like to remind members opposite that thanks to the hard work of Councillor O'Brien and our officer team, we actually received from the Labour government, yes, the Labour government, a letter telling us how well we were doing in reducing that deficit. So actually I'd like to thank the Labour government for recognising that the local Hillingdon London Council is doing that. Councillor Gill spoke about Hillingdon being ranked as the third worst borough in London. Now that comes out from a Time Out poll. In that Time Out poll, one of the things they measure a good place to live is how many Michelin star restaurants a borough has. I don't rate this borough on its greatness on Michelin star restaurants. I rate it on making sure that it has sound financial management so we can get things done. Fixing our roads, filling our potholes, having first class...
All right, settle down, please. Sorry, Councillor Smallwood.
That's all right, Mr.
Thank
Mayor.
you. Carry on.
Members opposite are enjoying their last meeting, and I congratulate them on that. Delivering world first-class adult social care, delivering children's services that have been ranked excellent. This is a council that delivers things. This is a budget that is balanced. And when we are back here in a few weeks' time, we will continue to do that for the residents of Hillingdon, putting our residents first. Mr. Mayor, I will be supporting this budget. And if the Labour Party had any guts this evening, we've heard them moan, we've heard them groan, they would have given us their alternative. They're void of ideas, and soon they'll be out of office. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Mills, Councillor Richard Mills.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Pleased to support this budget this evening, and again another excellent delivery from the Cabinet Member for Finance in terms of setting out what opportunities we have for this borough going forward. Now, opposition members have many sheets of white paper on their desk tonight, but what we've really seen, they may as well be white flags, because what we see tonight is the surrender of the Labour group in Hillingdon. To not be able to produce any ideas before an election is quite outstanding. Members have to wonder, they've had all this time with senior officers, they've been sitting squirreled away in their office, maybe fighting between themselves, but they have all this officer exposure, all the expertise, and they haven't been able to produce a single thing. Maybe their backbenchers must be wondering, was all this coup and overthrowing their previous leader worth it? Because their backbenchers are now being asked to go into election and have nothing to offer the electorate. Mr Mayor, that may also be why the Labour group in Hillingdon are unable to currently obtain the number of candidates to fill the number of seats across the borough, and are having to send out begging emails asking people to stand, not because they want to represent the people of our borough, but so they can come and help their colleagues and make sure that papers go in the right piles.
Okay, let's settle down. Carry on, Councillor Mills.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. What we've seen tonight, effectively, is an ability to produce any alternative, and they've taken the Section 25 report and they've put it through ChatGPT, and I'll make this sound as bad as possible. They must be wondering, what is their leader collecting his allowance for? They're forced to come in behind him, yet have nothing to offer. They're given pre-written questions in committees. They can't think for themselves. They're being run by one or two individuals who don't have the support of the group, and this will be the probably lowest number of people in their group that they have voting in favour of them. Think of what they started after the last election, Mr Mayor. 23 members. Tonight, they're just about able to scrape double figures.
Any other speakers at all? Okay, Lloyd?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In which case we call Councillor Edwards. I just wish to remind members Councillor Edwards is speaking in his role of seconding the original motion, so he gets unlimited speaking time.
Councillor Edwards.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. My colleagues have already set out in detail the key elements of our proposed budget, the benefits we'll deliver and the challenges that remain. I look forward to sending the opposition the video of achievements for 2025-26 that the Council is about to publish, that sets out very clearly what we have delivered for our residents. And if I heard the speech right, I will congratulate Ealing on having found £30 million to invest in their services going forward next year, their residents next year. But let me just draw attention to Table 11, which shows we're putting £42.6 million into our services, or maybe even look further down at another table, Table 14, which shows we're putting in £136 million into our housing. So well done, Ealing, for their 30. I appreciate it. But rather than go back over the ground that our colleagues have already mentioned about the strengths of the budget, I'm going to step back and reflect on the wider context in which the budget has been constructed and what this might mean for the future of the Council. As has been made much of tonight, Hillingdon is one of 35 local authorities granted exceptional financial support this year. That means one in four London councils now requires assistance. And London Councils itself, the organisation, predicts this number will continue to rise over the coming years. The majority of councils seeking support, Hillingdon included, do so because the local government system is, at this moment in time, fundamentally broken. Change is finally underway, and the government, the Labour government, does deserve recognition for making progress on the long-promised overhaul of how local authorities are funded. But as I will outline, there is still further to go to ensure that the funding is both fair and sufficient. For statutory services to remain stable, funding for local authorities must rise each year to keep pace with inflation and growing demand. Yet analysis by London councils shows that the three-year settlement for local government that underpins our budget fails this very basic test, with real-term cuts to total local authority spending forecast in years 2 and 3. Local government finance is critically dependent on the government's ability to control spending. However, we've seen from the repeated U-turns, they are demonstrating a complete inability to resist pressure to increase welfare and benefit spending, which is detrimental to other essential services. Not only local authority, it is clear the criminal justice system is close to collapse, and our armed forces urgently need greater investment. The government's approach to social justice has weakened incentives for entrepreneurship, for employers to create jobs and for individuals to work, to save and build a secure future for their families. Instead of empowering people, it risks fostering dependency, the policy equivalent of tackling health inequalities by making the healthy ill. We now face a likely future of more regulation, rising welfare costs and higher taxation, a combination that suppresses economic growth and in turn drives greater demand for council services. The collapse in youth employment is particularly alarming by driving up the cost of employment, especially for young people. The life chances of a significant proportion of the next generation are being damaged. Many already carry substantial and arguably unsustainable student debt, and they are finding increasingly difficult to progress, to secure a home or to start a family. Government policy is making that journey even harder. As more young people face a bleak and uncertain future, many will inevitably turn to councils for support. The cost of providing that support will place further pressure on our already stretched finances. But the challenge of ensuring sufficient funding for all service areas doesn't rest with central government alone. Councils themselves are increasingly being pushed down the same path, prioritising high-cost welfare interventions for a very small number of residents at the expense of the universal services relied upon by the vast majority. Today, around 2/3 of our expenditure, maybe more, is spent perhaps on as few as 1 in 20 of our residents. That simply does not align with the primary purpose of a local authority, which is to deliver the essential everyday services that keep communities functioning. The bin collections, the maintenance of streets, parks and open spaces, planning, licensing, enforcement, cultural services, libraries. The informal contract between resident and council is at risk of breaking down, and it is a common complaint across the country that residents are paying more and more in council tax, but seeming to get nothing more in return. Nothing drives this perception more than the shift to fortnightly and now even 3-weekly bin collections. And it is telling that in response to the budget consultation, residents placed waste collection and street cleaning second only to protecting children, ahead of other social care spending. Let me be clear, Hillingdon Conservatives will continue to fight to regain our weekly collection service. Our ability to properly serve the majority is being steadily weakened as central government extends its reach into local authorities, placing new duties on councils without providing the full funding required to deliver them. This is compounded by the expectation that an increasing share of the cost should be funded through council tax, a move that saves central government money but places an unfair burden on local residents. Local government as a whole is sleepwalking into becoming the delivery arm for central government, putting government's priorities before those of the people that we're actually here to serve, our residents. If we are to retain our public's confidence, we must halt the erosion of spending power for universal services, ideally begin to reverse it, and we must continue to put their priorities first. The cost shunting from central government onto council taxpayers has been growing for years, but it has now reached new heights. While both the government and Labour group have been loudly promoting the improved funding for councils, they have been far quieter about the fact that this settlement requires above inflation rate council tax rises. As has already been said, of the £105.3 million increase in Hillingdon's funding that the government has promised and the Labour colleagues celebrate, £28.7 million of that is not coming from the government at all. It's coming from the pockets of our residents. As Councillor Curling has pointed out, it is deeply cynical of government to claim to be tackling the cost of living crisis and that to be one of their highest priorities, whilst quietly requiring council tax rises to be double the likely rate of inflation every year until 2029. This is not only cost shunting, it's now blame shunting, and that is not acceptable. It makes a mockery of any lingering claim that Labour stands up for working families. The growth in our grant funding over the next 3 years is not, as Labour colleagues suggest, a sign of government generosity, nor is it anywhere near sufficient to allow for the service growth. It is simply the bare minimum required to meet the rising cost and demand of statutory services. In fact, it highlights just how severely Hillingdon has been underfunded in recent years, a shortfall that we are now having to plug retrospectively through exceptional financial support. The new funding formula and the 3-year settlement are steps in the right direction, but they do not fix the underlying weaknesses in the system. Council tax now carries an even heavier burden, despite it being a poorly designed tax that is long overdue for reform. The business rate system, which provides around a quarter of our funding, is in disarray, and I draw members' attention to the risks highlighted in the budget report regarding the volatility and potential appeals from business rates. Until these structural issues are addressed, councils will continue to face uncertainty. Residents will continue to shoulder an unfair share of the cost, and the sustainability of local services will remain at risk. The so-called Fair Funding Review 2.0 was intended to allocate resources to council according to their genuine need. That need based on population, demographics, deprivation, existing service demand, and the local council tax base. In principle, it should determine how the total pot of local government funding is fairly distributed. And while the formula has delivered a substantial increase of funding in Hillingdon, it has not delivered fair funding for Hillingdon. Unfairness persists because the government has introduced new grant payments for authorities where, in its view, the fair funding formula has not provided the outcome it wants. In other words, the government is overriding its own system when it dislikes the results. Since the current formula was introduced in 2013, the landscape has changed significantly. Some councils, including Hillingdon, now require a larger share of that funding pot, while others require less. Residents will understand that councils facing a reduction in funding may need transitional support. But fairness demands that such support is strictly limited to what is necessary, because every pound of overfunding of one authority is a pound of underfunding to another, and Hillingdon is one of those losing out. What is unacceptable is that 2 Labour London councils will receive £76.7 million in that protection floor funding over the next 3 years, not to maintain essential services, but to enable them to freeze their council tax this year in 2026-27 in a desperate attempt to retain control. To make matters worse, both of these councils already have council tax levels at least £1,000 lower than Hillingdon's, and Hillingdon is itself a low tax authority. The floor payments in these conditions are in effect an unjustified and grossly unfair transfer of our residents' money to the residents of those 2 councils. The government's £2.6 million recovery fund, the enhanced recovery fund, and the £5 million Pride in Place grants further distort the outcome of the new funding formula. One London Labour-led council with close connections to both the current and former Prime Ministers is particularly fortunate. It will receive recovery funding, recovery grant funding, recovery grant uplift funding, and protection floor funding. In total, it will receive a top-up of £95.2 million over the next 3 years, and that is over and above what the fair funding formula allocates to them. Meanwhile, Hillingdon will receive £65 million less than the fair funding formula allocates to us over that period. And even in 2028-29, when Hillingdon finally receives the full amount, that fortunate council will still enjoy per capita spending power at least 1/3 higher than Hillingdon. How can this possibly be described as fair funding? It is no surprise that the Institute of Fiscal Studies has criticised the government for meddling in the final settlement. The final unfairness, in my opinion, arises through the apportionment of business rates. Most residents, and even Heathrow Airport itself, assume that hosting the airport must at least give us a financial benefit through the business rates that the airport generates. But that is a false assumption. According to data published on the government's website, Hillingdon collected the 5th highest amount of business rates in the entire country last year. More than Leeds, more than Manchester or Birmingham. Yet we received less business rates than 95 other councils. It is perverse that 15 London councils collect business rates of a less amount than Hillingdon. Many substantially less. Yet those 15 are permitted to retain more. The favoured borough that I referred to collected £102 million less in business rates than Hillingdon last year, but its settlement includes £55 million more in business rates than us. The failure of the business rates regime to properly fund this council for the burden of being a port authority is not only an ongoing threat to our financial resilience, it is grossly unfair to our residents, and it needs to be addressed, and we will continue to press for genuine fair funding for Hillingdon. For all its weaknesses, the financial settlement up until 2029 is a significant improvement on our current level of government funding. Hillingdon Conservatives will ensure that the Council's revenue expenditure remains within the total financial envelope provided by that settlement. Our ambition, our intention, is to deliver modest annual surpluses from 2029 to 2030 onwards, even after repayments of the exceptional financial support are taken into account. To achieve this, we will not be cutting services despite the opposition's repeated calls for such action by insisting on a Section 114 be issued, just to satisfy their political egos. Instead, we will refresh our savings programme, which has already delivered £19 million this year, and it will deliver more in the future years, necessary to secure the efficiencies to keep our balanced budget. We will continue to innovate, make best use of artificial intelligence to drive down cost and improve productivity. We will further commercialise our assets to generate sustainable income. And we will continue to invest in high-quality facilities, such as the West Drayton Leisure Centre and the new HOAC, Hillingdon's Outdoor Activity Centre, whilst also keeping on top and improving our public realm, our open spaces, our parks. As my colleagues have outlined, this is a sound, responsible and forward-looking budget that protects services, expands facilities and strengthens our financial position. I want to thank Councillor Lavery and his predecessor, Councillor Goddard, for their leadership through the last year and the budget building process. I particularly wish to thank the finance team and to our Section 151 officer for their many late hours and unsocial hours they have dedicated to aligning our spending plans with a funding formula finalised at the very last minute. Mr Mayor, I do commend this budget to the Chamber. Thank you.
Thank you. And back to Councillor Lavery as move the motion. Thank you.
Mr Mayor, I have little to add. My colleagues have already summed up most of it. This is a robust and realistic budget with costed savings proposals, and the relevant spend controls already exist within this authority. The Labour Group put no proposals forward. Most of their speakers managed to contain themselves, but a couple slipped the leash with a kind of list of things they would like to have done or wish we hadn't done. I think their true colours came out, but they didn't have the guts tonight to put a proposal on the table and explain how they would pay for it. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. We now come to the vote. I think over to you, Lloyd.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Final vote of the evening, name vote. So, members, just for clarification, we're voting on the budget recommendations. 1 to 21 are set out on pages 3 to 7, as moved by Councillor Lavery, seconded by Councillor Edwards. I'll be asking you in turn if you're voting for those recommendations, against or abstaining. Councillor Abbey.
For.
Councillor Ahmad Walana.
For the budget.
Councillor Banerjee. Councillor Bassett. Sorry, I didn't hear it. Thank you. Councillor Batt. Councillor Bianco. Councillor Bridges. Councillor Burles. Councillor Chubadar. Councillor Curling. Councillor Davies. Councillor Dennis. Councillor Dott. Councillor Edwards. Councillor Farley. Councillor Gardner. Councillor Gaelic. Councillor Gill. Councillor Gohill. Councillor Hagger. Councillor Higgins. Councillor Islam. Councillor Kaur. Councillor Lakhmana. Councillor Lavery. Councillor Makwana. Councillor Mand. Councillor Martin. Councillor Mathers. Councillor Douglas Mills. Councillor Richard Mills. Councillor Nelson West. Councillor O'Brien. Councillor Punja. Councillor Riley. Councillor Sansapuri. Councillor Singh. Councillor Smallwood. Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Sweeting. Councillor Tuckwell. And Mr. Mayor.
For.
Mr. Mayor, that budget motion is carried.